Are artificial sweeteners bad? It's not really a useful question. The WHO released a statement saying aspartame possibly carcinogenic to humans. I genuinely did not know before researching this episode that almost every artificial sweetener was discovered by accident.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the How to Fitness podcast with me, Michael Ujoa.
And me, Kate Lyman.
And today we're back with a Kate Lyman deep dive, and I genuinely have no idea what we're talking about today. So
I know,
I'm excited.
I love that for you.
Yeah.
I know so much about what we're talking about
I
today.
almost messaged you to be like, okay, what are we talking about today? We've had, full disclosure, we've had crazy busy weeks, both of us. I've just got back from my sister's wedding. It's been very full on, so I've had no time to think about work, podcast, anything other than wedding and family stuff. And I was going to message you, but I thought, no, I'm going to come in completely blind and just enjoy the deep dive. Yeah.
I'm actually really excited because I do have questions. I feel like we'll have some good discussion in this episode that I'm excited about. And Michael, you know me and time, and so I really want to get right into it. But do you think before we do that, you could kind of tell our listeners where we're at as we near the end of this season?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're coming to the end of another season, Kate. Time is flying by.
Yeah.
Look at that. Yeah, I feel like we should talk about this, shouldn't we? So at the end of last season, we took a little bit of a break. Both Kate and I, we need a break every now and again because we have so many work things, life things that we are juggling. We got a lot of momentum in our last series. Our listenership was climbing, lots of new people about. I kind of feel like having the break killed that momentum, Kate.
Yeah, we've taken that break. Like the last 3 seasons, we've done released 20 episodes and then taken a break until the new year. Mm-hmm. And then again in January started with 20 episodes, and we've just never recovered from, I mean, emotionally, of course, but like we're never recovered. But like we've never recovered the momentum we had from season 3 because of that break we took, which everyone in the industry was like, don't do that break. And Michael and I were like, you don't get it. We're going to die. We don't have this break. Like, you don't get it.
Yeah.
So we're kind of in a pickle because we are nearing what would be a break and like feeling like we need it, but also we want to we don't want to lose momentum we've built across this season. So do you want to tell them what we've been thinking about? I'd love to hear feedback from our listeners.
Yeah, we welcome it. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of re-release some older episodes that we think are awesome. Not that we're biased at all, Kate. We're going to re-release some episodes that we think are great, and to maybe a lot of newer listeners, they probably haven't heard these episodes before. We might record a few little kind of walk and talks again, I think is the plan, right, Kate? Some kind of little shorter, snappier episodes that maybe are reacting to some things that are a little bit more current and happening at the moment within the fitness, wellness, nutrition space. So we're going to keep some content coming whilst also taking a bit of a break because by golly, we need it.
We need it. We need it. But I'd love to hear our listeners' thoughts on that. Like we get a lot of great feedback from you all, and I'd love to hear how that sounds for you. Like, would you listen to, especially if you're newer, would you want kind of a best of season 1, 2, and 3 episode as the re-release, or what would you want to hear?
Let us know your thoughts. And on that, once again, any reviews, please share our podcast, tell everyone about it. The reviews really help us out. It opens it up to newer listeners as our podcast gets pushed on other platforms. So if you can leave a review, we would really appreciate it. And I think that's enough groveling here, Kate. Should we move into the episode?
Good groveling. Well done. Yes, let's do it. Also, I'm like, my diving right into this is going to feel so weird when you have no concept of what we're talking about today, but I'm just going to do it. Michael, do you know like the Mormon lore around Diet Coke?
No.
Okay, well, like Diet Coke or Diet Soda in general is like a really integral part of Mormon culture. And I come from like a very intense Diet Coke family. I would not be, I have not confirmed this, but like, I would not be surprised if as a baby, I was given Diet Coke before water.
Is this like Diet Coke specifically, not kind of like full sugar, or is it?
So specifically Diet Coke.
Oh, wow. Okay. No, I did not know this. No.
We're talking about artificial sweeteners today. So if you're still confused, like hopefully that makes more sense. But I had to set the stage with the fact that I really like artificial sweeteners, because I really like diet soda. And actually, had you known what the topic was on, I assumed you would have come with your diet Pepsi. Or what do you drink? Pepsi Max?
Do you know, I prefer Pepsi Max. But saying that, I've not touched a fizzy drink, fizzy pop, whatever you want to call it, in like weeks.
Really? Okay.
Or months even, yeah. So I have a very delicate stomach, Kate. I don't know if you know
We
this
know.
about me.
We know this.
I can't eat eggs or dairy. And there's other foods that do just like, they just don't sit great. I have a very sensitive stomach. And fizzy drinks, man, I just don't feel good. So
Is
I've
it
moved
the
away.
bubbles or
it's the bubbles.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's the bubbles. Because I
Sorry.
have like diluting juice. So this is a very Scottish / British thing. Diluting juice, squash, where you put like a little bit of flavored liquid in water, and it's artificial sweeteners. And I'm fine with those. My stomach is great. It's just the fizz. So I've been drinking a lot of peach tea recently.
Oh, that's
like
true. That is
like
what
iced
you've
tea.
had. Yeah. Well, I'm sorry for you because I love diet soda. And like I said, I come from a very like diet soda centric family. So my whole life, my grandparents, they go out at 6 or 7 a.m. and they get their first diet soda of the day. My grandma, 7 a.m. Diet Coke from McDonald's. My grandpa, 7 a.m. Diet Pepsi from 7-Eleven. Like everyone in my family kind of follows suit. In
my
fact,
family are big Diet Coke fans.
Diet
They
Coke,
love Diet Coke. Yeah.
I can't not mention this, but this is a few years back. I want to say like 6 years ago. This one side of my family, we had like a big extended family reunion in Lincoln City, Oregon, and the McDonald's in Lincoln City ran out of Diet Coke. Like that sounds like a myth or a legend. It is not. We ran out of Diet Coke. There was panic. We all had to go to this grocery store and buy the cans, but no one likes the cans. Anyway, so.
The great Diet Coke revolt of
Exactly.
2023. Yeah, crazy.
Exactly. So like Diet Coke is kind of all the rage right now. The fridge cig trend. I don't know if you've seen calling it a fridge cigarette. There's kind of an aesthetic around it, but like I'm an OG and I've been consuming it without care in the world, without a care in the world for a really long time.
I feel like it's the only type of research coming out that you would be biased against for like no other reason other than you just enjoy it. Be like, whatever.
We'll talk about that. Like,
Okay.
I'm going to this episode as this was a requested topic, and I don't really think I have personally ever worried too much about artificial sweeteners. I don't know if you have, Michael.
No, not really. I do with the kids, but not with me.
Fair.
Yeah.
Fair. So I am coming into this episode like fully ready to change my mind, not change my actions potentially, but change my mind. But I'm also coming into this episode with like my personal philosophy around my health, which is more or less like sussing out the difference between a real risk and a perceived risk. And that's kind of how I see my artificial sweetener consumption. Like I don't drink alcohol. I don't smoke. I don't eat processed meat or red meat. And that's more of a preference thing. But like I wear sunscreen. Like I am thus lowering risks of cancer and cardiovascular disease via like a lot of different things, I think. So to me, the risk around artificial sweeteners is like minimal.
I think your artificial sweetener habit addiction, I don't know what you want to call it, Kate, without being too extreme, is my coffee. Like I drink a lot of coffee.
Yeah.
I would say it's maybe a vice because I drink a lot of coffee, but I don't do anything else. I don't drink smoke. I eat really healthy. Like exactly, I'm the same as you. Wear sunscreen, blah blah blah. So it's you got to have one slight vice, right?
Is like probably an appropriate word, except like, is it bad? I don't know. We're gonna talk about it, right? And you know, I'm coming into this episode like genuinely open to changing my mind. And I did learn a lot.
Okay.
I don't know. We'll talk about it. Thanks. So today, as always, we're going to kind of separate some facts from some fear, from some diet culture. And we're doing so around this topic of artificial sweeteners, which, by the way, is not just diet soda, right? By the end of this episode, I really want us to kind of have an idea of a filter for evaluating these types of nutrition claims we see so often. XYZ is bad, right? So we can make our own decisions. So we're going to talk about why we can't really make broad sweeping statements about why artificial sweeteners are good or bad. And we're going to dig into why nutrition research is so freaking hard to interpret and how confusing headlines get weaponized quite often and fear-mongered. And we're going to go through the actual claims: cancer, gut health, weight gain, cardiovascular disease, blah, blah, all of it. I feel like every time I do an episode, I start by taking the question. I'm like, we can't actually ask that question. And I feel that here. Like,
sure.
Are artificial sweeteners bad? It's not really a useful question. Like the answer depends on
context.
Who we're talking about, in what way, compared to what, at what dose. And those are going to come up over and over in this episode. So like I just said, artificial sweeteners, not just diet soda, They're in protein powder, chewing gum, toothpaste, coffee mate, or whatever it's called, right? Like coffee sweetener things. What is that called?
I don't know. I don't use them. Is it just a US thing as well? Maybe.
I don't know. Maybe.
I know of it, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe just from movies. Do I
It's actually
anyway.
one of the people who requested this episode, one of our listeners, was like specifically talking about like coffee additives. So I should have looked more into the names of those. But sugar-free Jell-O, flavored yogurts, energy drinks. Like if something is labeled 0 sugar or light, there's a good chance there's an artificial sweetener in there. So
we can get it here in the UK as well. Just
just not as popular maybe.
Yeah.
So let me introduce you really quickly to 3 different sweetener categories. The first is what we call nutritive sweeteners. This is sugar, honey, maple syrup, high fructose corn syrup, anything that provides actual calories and raises your blood sugar. There are sugars like coconut sugar or molasses that have teeny tiny amounts of minerals in them, but they're mostly just calories from sugar, right?
Sure.
That's not what we're talking about today. The second category is sugar alcohols: xylitol, erythritol, sorbitol, malitol. These are confusing sometimes to people because they contain alcohol, the word, and then sugar sounds like the thing they're trying to avoid. Sugar alcohols are like this middle ground option. They actually occur naturally in some fruits and vegetables, and they're poorly absorbed by our body, so they have fewer calories and a lower glycemic impact than regular sugar. They don't cause tooth decay, so that's often what's in gum. Like there's a lot of xylitol or sorbitol gums. And the downside is that in larger amounts, they can cause some really uncomfortable digestive issues. Michael, I assume you do not tolerate sugar alcohols well.
I don't really consume them. I don't use them at all, to be honest with you. But I was always fine with them before. My stomach was better when I used to use chewing gum and stuff. I'm not chewing gum in years.
I used to eat protein bars when I lived in the US, as many of us do. It's a very normal thing. And now we don't really have access to them in Mexico. Like sometimes my mom will bring me some when I see her.
As a treat.
But yeah, as a treat, except that I can't eat them anymore because the sugar alcohols hurt my tummy so bad. It's like, it's just like to me, it's like an uncomfortable bloating that makes me feel like a hot air balloon. Like nothing happened, just like pain. But there's some really funny Amazon reviews you can find from folks who have eaten like a whole bag of sugar-free gummy bears that were made with xylitol, and they're like so dramatically sick after because they didn't know it was going to happen. Anyway, we're also not talking about sugar alcohols today. What we're talking about is this third category, non-nutritive sweeteners. In the literature, it's usually called NNS. And these are either plant-derived or synthetic, and they provide little to no calories. So the FDA has approved 6 synthetic ones: aspartame, acesulfame potassium, advantame, neotame, saccharin, and sucralose. There's actually more in the UK and Europe and around the world. The US has fewer approved synthetic artificial sweeteners. And then there's 3 plant-based options. Do you know what these ones are, Michael?
Off the top of my head,
okay.
no.
Stevia, are you familiar with stevia?
Of course, yeah. Okay.
Stevia, monk fruit, and then thaumatin, which I don't really know what
monk
that is.
fruit. Don't think I've heard of that before.
Personal opinion, disgusting.
Okay.
Leaves a very weird taste in the mouth. And what these all have in common is they are significantly sweeter than sugar. So between 200 and 20,000 times sweeter, depending on the compound. Which is why we only need a tiny amount if you're putting them in a food or additive, and why they technically have calories, but like they're used in such small quantities that they're functionally 0 calories. The way that these artificial sweeteners are handled by our bodies varies quite a bit by sweetener. Saccharin and acesulfame K pass through you and leave your urine basically unchanged. Your body doesn't touch them, essentially. Most sucralose is never absorbed at all and it exits through your stool. Aspartame is an exception. Your gut breaks it down completely into 2 different amino acids and a small amount of methanol. But all of these breakdown products are found in ordinary foods, like usually in larger amounts than in a single diet soda or a protein bar or whatever that may be. And so I just think that recognizing that these non-nutritive sweeteners don't all move through our bodies in the same way also gives us some more insight into why we can't group all artificial sweeteners as good or bad, right? Like they're very different. It feels helpful to me to know that there is a rigorous approval process. Specifically the FDA, like to be approved, each of these sweeteners has to pass through a standard toxicology battery. They do a lifetime cancer study in 2 different rodent species, and then a multi-generation reproduction and birth defect study, and then a set of genotoxicity assays to check whether the molecule they're testing damages the DNA. And I am not here saying that the FDA is like the highest caliber of regulation, but the point being like these aren't discovered and then just like thrown into the food supply.
Yeah, I think it's a misconception, isn't it? Like, absolutely, I think there's certainly issues with US food standards, UK food standards too, but actually the US food standards are actually pretty darn high when you look at the world stage, right? And the fact that only 6 of them are allowed and there's more allowed elsewhere, like, just is a little window into that the regulations do exist.
Yeah, and I think like this kind of sounds a little boring to talk about, but it's setting the stage for the fact that like when a headline comes up saying XYZ causes blah, 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 like it's not some new discovered chemical that we just threw in the food supply without thinking about it, right?
Sure.
Like there are regulations in place. So I believe that like understanding the process of how these regulatory bodies set safety limits feels pretty helpful. And so the safety limit, this is so interesting. I didn't actually know the specifics here, but regulators find the highest dose that causes no detectable adverse effect in animal studies. This is called the NOAEL, the no observed adverse effect level. So that's the highest amount with no negative effect. Then they divide it by 100. So there is a 100 times safety margin to account for the possibility that maybe humans are more sensitive than animals and that some individual humans may be more sensitive than others. So for aspartame, which we actually know kind of a bit more about aspartame in certain ways.
It's the one that gets spoken about the most, right?
Yeah, and it's what's in Diet Coke. The NOAEL in animal studies was 4,000 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. So if we divide that by 100, you get the FDA's acceptable daily intake of 40 milligrams per kilo. Michael, let's do your math real quick.
Okay.
What's your
83-ish, 83 kilo.
83 times 40. That gives you 3,320 milligrams per day. If we call a diet soda, like I want to say it's about 200. Yeah, 200 milligrams per, or maybe lower. It kind of depends on the soda. You're getting like 16 Diet Cokes a day.
This is a challenge I will happily accept, Kate.
Your stomach would be wrecked.
Oh, God, yeah. For weeks, I'd be down. I'd be down and out.
So,
yeah.
Yeah, for the average adult, I mean, and that's kind of hard to say, but it's gonna be like 9 to 20 diet sodas per day. Every single day for your entire life before you even reach the safety threshold, which is the non-adverse effects limit divided by 100. Not danger threshold, but safety threshold. So this is the conservative safety threshold built for the most sensitive person possible, essentially. I'm just kind of setting the stage that these are some of the more studied food additives we have in the history of our food supply. The FDA has reviewed over 100 studies on aspartame alone, over 110 for sucralose, over 90 for acesulfame K. They're not new. They're not untested. And this ADI, the acceptable daily intake, the 40 milligrams per kilo, is the same that's recommended by the WHO and the International Agency for Research on Cancer and the Food Standards Agency over the UK. And, due to the nature of our podcast, I usually look at the US and the UK, and I'm sure it's similar around the world, but I didn't check everywhere.
Shocking,
yeah. So now let's talk a little bit about the quote natural sweeteners. This was what I was saying, stevia, monk fruit, etc. Okay, first off, I think they're gross. They have bad aftertaste. So that's personal preference. But these are marketed quite often as natural. They're often in the little green packet. Stevia usually has a leaf on it. If it's,
they know what they're doing.
Marketing. They know what they're doing. And I want to kind of gently push back on that framing because the natural versus artificial line is very much a marketing distinction, not a health one. The stevia in your pantry isn't a leaf. It is the purified isolate of specific molecules called steviol glycosides. And interestingly enough, the FDA has actually raised concerns about the less purified crude stevia leaf extracts, the ones that are closer to, quote, natural. They call it inadequate toxicological information. They don't have enough information. It's not a study.
Okay.
So the WHO puts purified stevia in the same category as aspartame and sucralose and calls it all non-sugar sweeteners or non-nutritive sweeteners. That's what we're talking about today.
It's natural, Kate.
It's not. But it's not. It's still made in a lab. And the differences on our health are not if it's from like a leaf or a food lab. They're both really from a food lab. It's like whether your body absorbs a compound and what your gut bacteria do with it. And man, okay. It's just, yeah. Narrowing this all down to a cohesive narrative was tough for me. It always is. And Michael, I could not in good faith do this episode without sharing the history of how most of these artificial sweeteners were discovered. I'm looking at all these paragraphs and I need to shorten it, but like I can't not share it. Okay.
Please do.
So
I'm an A-level history student. I love it. Bring me the stories.
I genuinely did not know before researching this episode that almost every artificial sweetener was discovered by accident.
Oh, cool.
I did not know that.
No.
And not through deliberate research, but literally through a scientist licking their finger.
Oh, God.
Let me explain. This is how we got saccharin. 1879. A researcher named Konstantin Fahlberg was working at Johns Hopkins on compounds derived from coal tar. And then he sat down to dinner and he picked up some bread and he took a bite and he thought, like, that's weirdly sweet. And then he realized, oh, I haven't washed my hands since I got home from work where I was in the lab working on coal tar derivatives. And he had spilled an experimental compound on his hands earlier in the day and hadn't washed them. So
Wow.
gross.
Okay.
Naturally, what he did was go back to his lab and like lick everything until he found the source, which was a beaker of benzoic sulfonide, which has become saccharin.
Wow.
It's about 300 times sweeter than sugar, and it was the first commercially viable alternative to cane sugar.
I'm guessing he didn't live to be an old guy because these kinds of
I
safety
don't know.
habits.
Like, I didn't look at that, but I think he's the same guy who was like, is too much bad? And he like took massive amounts. He's like, look, I'm fine. I don't know. I'd have to fact check that one. I read a lot of strange history.
Don't fact check it. Let's keep it in. It makes for a great story, Kate.
So saccharin actually was like really used widely and immediately with essentially no approval process because that process didn't really exist yet.
Sure.
We're talking 1879. And then early 1900s, this head chemist at the Department of Agriculture, Harvey Wiley, who helped pass the Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906, tried to pull it from the market. And President Roosevelt at the time was like, no, I like this stuff. He really liked saccharin and his doctor was giving him saccharin. So he was like, no, it's staying. And that is the regulatory history of the first artificial sweetener.
I love
like
that.
a president protecting his diet drug. And saccharin actually was really, really, really important through World War I and World War II when sugar was rationed, which makes a lot of sense, right? Kind of bizarre. But what's more bizarre is this happened again. Cyclamate 1937 discovered when a researcher was on a smoke break and he set his cigarette down on the lab bench and then picked it back up and he was like, oh, it's sweet. Fast forward, aspartame, 1965, chemist was working on an ulcer medication and he licked his finger and it was sweet. That's how we have aspartame. Acesulfame K, 1967, another finger licking situation. And then sucralose, 1976. I read this about 4 times over, but couldn't confirm that this really, really happened. Like, I feel like it's more like a myth. A researcher in London supposedly misheard the instruction to test a compound and tasted it instead. And
Were
now
these
we have
all men?
Splenda. What a stupid question, Michael.
I was going to say, this is just like a little window into how gross men's hand washing habits are. If any guy listening goes into a public restroom, you know how awful guys are with their hand hygiene. This
so
is
gross.
That amplified. There we go.
Like, it's literally the results of scientists with bad lab hygiene.
Oh, I love and hate this so much.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad that we have these substances, but my goodness. So all of these first generation sweeteners, saccharin, cyclamate, aspartame, they were linked to various health scares not too far after hitting the market. And in all 3 cases, more research declared the product safe. There was a lot of press coverage. There was kind of a suspicion in the collective consciousness that these additives are bad, right? And I don't think that we've ever gotten over that. There's a pattern we come back to over and over and over. Late 1960s, we kind of have these on the market, and three things converged. More government regulation of the food industry, quite rapid rise of the artificial sweetener market, and a growing complexity of health science. And we have this environment where the sugar industry is kind of lobbying to make artificial sweeteners look dangerous, and the artificial sweetener industry is lobbying to make sugar look dangerous. It's all bureaucracy, right? Like both sides have this incentive to amplify whatever is scary sounding coming out of the labs, and both sides just did that. And I was reading this article from, what was it, sciencehistory.org about this history of artificial sweeteners. And there was this line that I thought was so good. It says, when it comes to food, Americans want the benefits of scientific progress, but without all that science. Better, faster, more. But it has to be natural.
Yeah, a nice little window into the wellness industry right there.
Exactly. It's like, there, to this point where we're talking about, there have been no real issues from these substances, right? It's just kind of media and lobbying back and forth creating these fears.
It's really frustrating because then that can devalue the impact these products can have if they are considered safe. Because if they are safe, people are like, well, actually, it's just because these people lobbied for it, and vice versa.
Exactly. There's a really good case study of all this with cyclamate, which I did not even know what it was because it's not actually approved in the US. Cyclamate is a sweetener that's completely legal and widely used across Europe and most of the world, actually. But it's been banned in the US since 1970. And here's why. In 1969, a single rat study, one, found that a mixture of cyclamate and saccharin fed at doses equivalent to a human consuming 550 diet sodas per day. Yes, 550, caused bladder tumors in 8 out of 240 rats.
Wow. Okay.
8 rats, outrageous doses, and the U.S. government banned it. And it's been shown over so many times, again and again, that those initial results can't be reproduced, but it's still banned. Actually, the FDA acknowledged, it says, a review of all the available evidence does not implicate cyclamate as a carcinogen in mice or rats, but it's still in place. The WHO has
overriding it or anything.
I guess not. The WHO has an acceptable daily intake. It's used in sweeteners and beverages and foods all over the world. So I assume there's some bureaucracy involved there as well.
Yeah, probably.
I don't know what you think of like kind of that Roosevelt story, Michael, but I feel like nothing's really changed. Like politicians protecting their personal dietary habits while publicly claiming to prioritize public health feels very timeless.
That was the exact thing I was thinking as you said that, but I didn't know how to word it. You nailed it. Yes, correct.
Yeah, same old, basically. I don't know about you, Michael, but like for me, when I put together an episode, the challenge I come across mostly is like unearthing the structure of an episode. Like I compile so much data and so much research, and then I have like these 40 pages of stuff, but I want to turn it into something engaging. And that was, I think, an exceptional challenge for me in this episode, because we could go sweetener by sweetener and talk about the pros and cons and what the research has found, but that feels really thorough and boring. And we could go claim by claim of like what we hear around artificial sweeteners, and we're kind of going to do that, but it's helpful, but also kind of boring. And as I kept digging into the research and kind of drawing these conclusions or making these connections, what I came up with is that in engaging in this conversation about are artificial sweeteners, quote, good or bad, we have to learn a little bit more about nutrition science. And I think this is something you and I, Michael, recognize is so confusing, so convoluted, so hard to communicate, but also part of the reason we have so much fear around food. So before we get into those specific health claims, which we are going to get to a little bit, I want to give our listeners and us really like a critical thinking filter for how we evaluate some of these claims ourselves. Because I don't think that like the goal of this episode is not like, should you drink Diet Coke or not? I don't care if you drink Diet Coke or not. Like, and I can't answer that for you, right? Or like, should you choose a protein powder with stevia or sucralose? Like, that's not really what it should be about. It's like, how do we navigate this world with big headlines and scary claims and do so in a way that doesn't leave us feeling like exhausted by having to make all these food decisions. So what I think we have to start with is talking about the naturalistic fallacy, which is this informal logical fallacy that argues if something is, quote, natural, it must be good. And Michael, we see this all the time, right?
All the time. Yeah.
All the time. And this is the assumption that artificial equals bad, right? I think literally by labeling these artificial sweeteners, we've kind of from the get-go thrown this like, I don't know, filter of bad over these substances because they are not natural.
Yep.
And it's very emotionally appealing. I get it. But it's also based on like the feeling of it being bad, not necessarily facts, right?
Yeah.
Arsenic is natural. Botulinum toxin is the most acutely toxic substance known to science. It is natural. And most of the food we eat is so far removed from its original known form that the plant or animal it came from is almost unrecognizable, right? So like shout out to our ancestral eating episode back in season 3 where we talked a lot about this. Almost nothing we consume day to day right now is in the state it was found in naturally long ago. So when we're considering artificial sweeteners bad because they're artificial, it's just like not that compelling of an argument if we really think about it, right?
Yeah. And I guess you even look at like some pharmaceutical products, they use like natural ingredients in some form as the main ingredient. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like it's just not as black and white as that.
Yeah, but it's not like they picked up that medicine out of the ground, right? So I think this applies to, artificial sweeteners versus sugar, but also the different sweeteners like the aspartame versus stevia. We also come up against some really major challenges in nutrition research. A lot of what gets reported in the news cannot actually support the conclusions being drawn from it because nutrition science is like really complicated and so confounded. So you have undoubtedly read a headline that says something akin to aspartame causes cancer, right? Would you say, like,
headline,
Michael, that's like the biggest claim you would consider?
Yeah.
you've heard around artificial sweeteners?
Yeah, probably. It's usually the cancer one, isn't it? I think that's, cancer's scary and headlines know that. So that seems to be the one that gets touted the most, unfortunately.
Exactly. So there's all these headlines from 2023 back when the WHO released a statement saying aspartame possibly carcinogenic to humans. And more specifically, saying the IARC classified aspartame as possibly carcinogenic to humans group 2B on the basis of limited evidence for cancer in humans. But like the headlines say aspartame and cancer risk. Should you put down the Diet Coke? Like recent study will cause you to rethink the sugar-free labels on foods and beverages, right? Like it's just kind of a fear-mongering approach to these headlines. But the actual statement, I'm going to spare you reading it all. What the actual study said is that there's limited evidence that this is carcinogenic in humans or animals, and we need to do more research, right? Like,
I think they hide around a lot of these things. Like they hide behind the different scaling system that the World Health Organization use.
Yeah.
And they just expect people to not delve deeper into it because headlines get clicks and that's all people care about.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, the headline says aspartame possibly carcinogenic to humans, but the actual statement release itself says like, we don't really know. It could be, could not be. We need more research, right? So when we understand the basic research pipeline, like scientists usually test a hypothesis in a petri dish in cell cultures in a lab. Usually nothing happens because most things don't create this like huge finding, right? Then they go to animals, then they go to humans, and each of those steps has a different level of relevance to what will actually happen in your body when you eat something. It makes sense that like we can't just take what compounded damages were found in a cell in a petri dish and then say, oh, that's going to happen to a human.
It's like what was in the media this week, just gone, a very well-known wellness doctor on the internet telling you that you shouldn't put your banana in your smoothie because it reduces the impact of one of the compounds, blah, blah, blah. And it's just taking like a really unique small case study and like applying those findings to everyone and saying that this is bad when actually it's not the case. It's like a really specific thing and circumstance where that can happen. And it's just infuriating.
Exactly that, right? So two things show up a lot when we look at observational studies. When it comes to nutrition science, we're typically looking at these observational studies, meaning studies that track large groups of people over time and look at links between their diet and their health outcomes. Not every study is an observational study, of course, but there are a lot of them because that's makes sense for how we are eating as humans, right? There's two things that show up a lot. One is reverse causality, which is basically seeing a false link between a health habit and a disease. So an example here could be diet soda causes diabetes, but maybe that reality is that more folks with diabetes have switched to diet soda, right?
Sure.
Then there are also a lot of confounding variables, meaning an outside factor that's creating a false or distorted link between two things. The observational studies that we usually end up with in humans, the ones that generate these headlines, are almost always correlational. So they show a relationship between two things, but they cannot tell you which caused the other. And in nutrition research specifically, these confounding variables are everywhere. People who drink a lot of diet soda may be also the same people who are managing weight or eating more processed food overall or under more chronic stress, et cetera, et cetera. So if you see a headline that says diet soda linked to X, like one of the first questions we can ask is, what else is true about the people who drink a lot of diet soda, right?
Yeah.
That is reverse causality. The association might not be saying diet soda causes the problem. It might be saying the people who already have the problem are more likely to drink diet soda. We have a really recent example here that I have seen in headlines. I don't know, Michael, if you've seen any of these headlines from this study, Goncalves et al., published in the Journal of Neurology, showing an association between artificial sweetener consumption and cognitive decline. Have you seen that at all?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah.
I've not looked into the research behind it, but I've seen the claim.
Yeah, the study, there's nothing wrong with the study. The study's a great study, but it says as much, it can't fully untangle metabolic syndrome, obesity, type 2 diabetes, which are all very independently and strongly linked to cognitive decline. And people with metabolic conditions are also more likely to consume artificial sweeteners, mostly because they're trying to manage sugar intake, right? So is the cognitive decline because of the sweeteners or because the underlying metabolic conditions that tend to go with sweetener use, right?
Yeah.
The researchers called out these patterns, but still there's been like a lot of headlines saying artificial sweeteners lead to cognitive decline. And I don't know about you, but like few things scare me more than cognitive decline. That's like, that really does get to me.
Yeah.
So while there's uncertainty like around the artificial sweeteners, we do know that obesity and diabetes and things like alcohol consumption do lead to cognitive decline. And that kind of brings me back to my real risk versus perceived risk argument, right? Like, okay, there could be something with artificial sweeteners and cognitive decline, but we know there's these other things that are like a more solid link. So this is not me saying that we all need to know how to read and interpret scientific literature. I'm not even good at that. And that's not the goal here. Like there are luckily really, really great science communicators out there doing the Lord's work. But I do think it's helpful to understand that there are some really significant challenges and limitations of nutrition research so that we are not blindsided by every headline we see.
Sure.
And let's not let the headlines, which are often swayed by findings that could be potentially due to reverse causality or correlation, to disconnect us from like the risks of our normal daily life and lifestyle, right? I really believe if artificial sweeteners were causing this like broad measurable harm at scale, whatever it would be, we've had a lot of time and a staggering number of human data points to feel certain about that. Anyway, so with that foundation, we can go through these claims, and I'm going to try to do so quickly because this is where I fear it getting boring. Again, we're not learning how to read in a scientific paper or research or interpret research, but I want to kind of go through with this filter of like, okay, but does this claim really make sense? And by the way, my takeaway from all this research is you can literally find evidence to support almost anything when it comes to this.
And I think that's the problem, isn't it? Yeah.
To this non-nutritive sweetener conversation, because who is it studied on and for how long and which sweetener and blah, 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 blah. Totally.
You have so many people making outrageous claims on the internet, and they can kind of protect themselves with really niche studies, but there is something there. Often.
Yeah, exactly. Like you could make a claim and there's probably an observational study on 8 individuals over 16 weeks that proves that, right? So Michael, what would you say is the biggest claim about these non-nutritive sweeteners?
I think it's Probably the cancer one is a lot. And then gut microbiome, but I know that the research around that is quite limited / new too. So probably those two.
Same wavelength. That's how I ordered it too.
Yeah.
So cancer. We kind of already touched on this with this 2023 classification of aspartame as a group 2B carcinogen. Group 2B means possibly carcinogenic to humans. It doesn't mean it causes cancer. It means we have limited or inconsistent evidence and we can't rule it out. Here's what else is in group 2B. Aloe vera extract, pickled vegetables, being a carpenter.
I always love that one. It's so good.
Yeah, woodworking.
Yeah.
So like it's been reviewed over and over that there's no suggestions for changing acceptable daily intake for aspartame or other sweeteners. And a lot, like there was concern about cancer and aspartame or non-nutritive sweeteners in general pre-2023. And that's because in the early 2000s, there was this study by the Ramazzini Institute showing aspartame caused cancer in rats. And there was so much press. But the dose that caused tumors was equivalent to a human drinking about 1,200 diet sodas a day.
And you love Diet Coke, Kate, but I think that's even too far for you.
I actually cannot drink more than 2 or my tummy hurts from the bubbles.
Okay.
So it's like, I think people think I drink a lot more
Yeah.
than I do. It's like 2. It's very reasonable amount.
Yeah. That's sensible.
So, everything is dose dependent. At almost any dose, anything can cause harm, right? Like you can die of drinking too much water. Okay, so the hard truth on cancer is we're probably never going to have a definitive randomized controlled trial, right? Like we're not going to ethically assign people to drink large amounts of suspected carcinogen for 30 years and then monitor their outcomes. So we're left with this observational data and its real limitations. And this is my thought, is working with what we have, like over a century of saccharin in the food supply and many more decades of other non-nutritive sweeteners. There's not really this major convincing evidence that artificial sweeteners cause cancer at like normal real life doses. But, someone could interpret that differently. But again, it's like real risk versus perceived risk. So second thing, gut health. They're bad for your gut. There is evidence that artificial sweeteners change the gut microbiome. There's this 2022 study in Cell that showed personalized microbiome-driven effects from different non-nutritive sweeteners. So it specifically showed some person-specific microbiome-dependent glycemic changes, with most of those coming from saccharin and sucralose. But there were responders and non-responders, which was really interesting. And they don't really know why.
That's kind of the beauty of nutrition though, right?
Yeah. And then there's this 2026 review of 7 sweeteners that found diverse and sometimes inconsistent effects on the gut bacteria and host metabolism. So yes, changes occur. And here's my question, is the change harmful? The research doesn't really clearly say so. And like, what else changes our microbiome? The foods we eat, stress, workouts, medication, right? Fiber intake, alcohol, exercise, sleep. The microbiome is really dynamic by design. So a change doesn't necessarily mean like a harmful disruption or harmful change.
Sure.
But this is also just a really tough field because we just don't really know much about the gut microbiome still, right? So this is
I've
where
worked
we
with quite a few clients who have said like, oh yeah, I don't touch those things because I feel like they mess up my stomach, whether it's a little bit of placebo or whatever, because we now it's talking about these messing up our gut microbiome. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, fair. And actually, like if a listener's thinking, oh yeah, I feel, XYZ type of way in my digestive system, I would say, look into what you're consuming. Is it those sugar alcohols, which we actually know cause some digestive distress, or is it these non-nutritive sweeteners? And I'm not saying it couldn't be for, it just depends on you, right?
Sure.
But there is evidence of change in the microbiome, but we don't really know what that means. Third thing, metabolic function. So for the sake of time, I'm trying to kind of lump metabolism into one big category, which is like weight, glucose and insulin response and more. And on the metabolic side, blood glucose and insulin show essentially no response to most non-nutritive sweeteners in the short term. That is categorically different from sugar-sweetened beverages, which do raise blood sugar, right? So there's
a claim you see a lot.
Yeah, there's a longer-term study, just one study, that found a small fasting insulin increase, but the participants were also given maltodextrin, a carbohydrate, alongside the sweetener. I was like, what was the point of that? So like, You can't attribute that to the non-nutritive sweetener. And again, I'm going to make this point again. You can probably go find a study that backs up artificial sweeteners spike blood sugar or they don't. They cause weight gain or they cause weight loss. It's not because of bad research, but because of the challenges of nutrition research and all the confounding variables. So kind of the takeaway here is that we don't know. Like, why is this so confusing? Reverse causality. People who drink a lot of diet soda are sometimes the people managing their weight or already have metabolic conditions or eat more processed foods or what have you. So the association between artificial sweeteners and weight or eating behaviors may not tell us what the sweetener does. It may be the person drinking them. Which brings me to point number 4, which I am most interested in. And this is the idea that they trick your brain. Have you heard this, Michael? Like you would be eating more or liking more sweet. I am very interested in what is called the compensation hypothesis around non-nutritive sweeteners, which is this idea that when you taste something sweet without the accompanying calories, they signal your brain that calories are incoming and your body prepares to receive calories and they don't show up. You go looking for more food elsewhere. Surprise, some studies find the evidence of this. Others don't. What controlled trials, the ones that like researchers actually randomize people to swap artificial sweeteners for sugar, show is that substitution doesn't really reliably produce excess calorie consumption leading to weight gain. But what we can see in the literature is that substituting sugar with artificial sweeteners equals lower caloric intake. We can see this. There's both like short and long-term randomized trials. I've got them in the show notes below. But does artificial sweetener use heighten appetite? Unsure. Do we see some compensation in overall intake? Sometimes in children, but also unsure. There is some moderate evidence that chronic artificial sweetener consumption could lead to like disrupted learned sweet calorie associations, like makes you want to eat more sweetness. The idea there being that because these non-nutritive sweeteners are so much sweeter than sugar, they recalibrate your sweetness threshold and then you crave more sweetness and then they push you to eat more calories overall. And this is an area of ongoing research that I think is really interesting. And it's actually in the like gut brain communication networks and how the brain anticipates and counts calories. But this is, of all the things we're talking about, the most unresolved of the claims. You can find evidence that they increase cravings and you can find evidence that they don't, right? So I don't know. I don't really have a definitive answer for you because the literature doesn't have one. I think when I have more artificial sweeteners, it does make me like more sweet things. Or I don't even know if that's right to say. It makes me feel like less sweet things are not sweet at all.
Yeah, that I agree with.
Like my tolerance for sweet is higher.
Yeah, I sometimes will have, we have like jelly pots at home. I really like jelly, or wait, you don't call it jelly, do you? Jello?
A jelly pot? What are you talking about? Jello?
Do you call it Jello? You call it jelly, like the wobbly, like.
Oh yeah, that's Jello. Okay.
That's Jello. Okay.
Jelly to me is like what you'd call marmalade.
Okay, like jam.
Jam.
Okay.
Jelly pot.
Okay.
That's so
So I had like little jelly pots, and I quite like those, and they're usually like. They're like low calorie ones. Not because I want low calorie ones. They just seem to be what they are when you buy them. And they seem to kind of like, when sometimes I just want something sweet, I have it and I'm like, oh, that's me done now. So I don't know. Who knows? I'm going to think about this more over the next few weeks.
We don't know. That's the thing. Yeah. All right. So last point here is artificial sweeteners and the impact on cardiovascular disease. And we can actually see artificial sweetener consumption associated with increased cardiovascular disease risk across multiple large prospective cohorts. There's this French study called the Nutrinet Santé study on 103,000 French adults, which found a 9% increased CVD risk. And it is a large study, and it does sound alarming. We can also find elevated risk of stroke, coronary heart disease, and all-cause mortality across multiple studies, both prospective cohort and meta-analyses.
Interesting.
But it is all observational, and there is no proven causality. So the World Health Organization calls the level of evidence low here, and there's no randomized controlled trials to directly test these. So, Kate, did you just tell me a whole lot of nothing? Kind of. I mean, kind of, yeah. Kind of.
I guess it just like makes us think, okay, let's just keep an eye out on any other data or any information that comes out, I guess is my takeaway from that.
Yes. Yeah. And like the dose response is everything, and the magnitude of risk matters so much, right? So are artificial sweeteners bad compared to what, right? If we're comparing diet soda versus sugar sweetened beverages, diet soda is going to be better in some ways, right? Less blood sugar impact, less impact on potential overconsumption of calories, better for dental health. Diet soda versus plain water, water wins. Not because diet soda is bad, but because water is better for you, right? And that comparison is easy. So if you like to consume artificial sweeteners and you want to continue doing so, the evidence does not support the level of fear that comes with the consumption of these additives. I would pay attention to how it impacts your overall eating behaviors and your tummy and really nothing else. That's that's my takeaway. So are they perfectly safe with no concerns? No. Do we need more information, more studies within the constraints of what we can do in nutrition science? Yes. Answering the is it bad question requires us to look at dose and frequency, and it definitely requires us to look past marketing and headlines, right? And ask what we actually know and how do we take this consumption of artificial sweeteners in the broader context of all of our food choices and behaviors. And I think it also requires us to look past this health halo that's often clouding our judgment when we say walk through a grocery store, right? Whether it's saying a food is better because it's lower calorie or it's saying a food is better because it's natural. There is something about the diet culture of it all here too, right? I took so long in this episode because I actually read all of these studies that all said, we don't really know, it depends.
A whole lot of meh.
Exactly. But what I kept thinking about the whole time since I started this episode, it was 2 weeks ago now, is we have piled an enormous amount of moral weight on our food choices, right? Sugar is bad, but artificial sweeteners are bad. Natural is good. Chemicals are bad, but also sometimes
what
buy
does
my
that even
supplement.
really mean?
What does that mean? Yeah. And there's so much inconsistency in the nutrition and wellness space, which I believe makes our critical thinking skills more important than ever. And here's what I keep coming back to, this dichotomous thinking, this belief that food is either clean or toxic or safe or dangerous or natural or chemical or good or bad. That binary may do more harm than any specific thing we are agonizing over consuming. It makes eating this moral exercise, and it sucks up so much of our mental time and energy, and it makes us perpetually anxious and susceptible to whoever shows up with a scary headline, and a product to sell us. So the goal of this episode has never been tell you that artificial sweeteners are fine or not, or give them up or whatever. It's more let's make sure we have the tools to evaluate those claims ourselves. And part of that is this question I've been asking, and I was talking with a friend about this episode, who benefits from us being so fearful of these foods? Michael, who do you think benefits?
Oh, well, I know it's not us.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not us. I'm is it the news networks who benefit from our clicks? Is it people selling products that are contrary to what the fear is, what the current fear is? I don't know, a lot of people, but you're right. The answer is not us. So for me, my philosophy hasn't changed. I came in thinking, I make a lot of choices that reduce some real health risks, and my moderate diet soda consumption falls pretty low on my personal concern list.
Yeah.
I still think that. I think I understand it better now. I understand why people are confused, and I understand that a lot of the confusion is just manufactured. And that's the part that feels really infuriating to me. So I think artificial sweeteners are this really good case study for the gap between real risk and perceived risk. And at the doses we typically consume, the evidence does not support the level of fear that we've built around these additives. And when we look at the history, the fear's kind of been there since the get-go, right? The scary headlines we see are almost always going to be a function of study design limitations or reverse causality or industry incentives, and the fact that science communication is really freaking hard. Really freaking hard. So what I think we can say here is if you feel uncomfortable with consuming non-nutritive sweeteners and the potential risks feel worrisome to you, do not consume them, right? If you feel better without them, that's true for you. And that
legit,
N equals
yeah.
1 is very, very valid for you. And there is no guarantee they are safe forever, but we need more studies and more evidence to say otherwise right now.
Yeah, completely agree. And yeah, no, I think you summarized that perfectly. I think if you are managing your health, there's so many different factors that we need to consider. This feels like a pretty small piece of the puzzle that people are putting a big emphasis on. And yeah, we're not benefiting from the discourse at all at the moment.
And I hope that our listeners can come away like feeling a little more equipped to navigate a scary nutrition headline, whether it's about sweeteners or something else. Maybe you ask, you read the headline, you say, for whom, how much, compared to what?
Sure.
Is this in a rat? Am I a rat? No, like,
Yeah.
this won't give us perfect answers, but it will save us a lot of unnecessary fear, and it will make us a harder target from the people who profit from that fear, whoever they may be.
Bang on.
Not us.
Kate, you need to go and celebrate with a Diet Coke.
With a Diet Coke.
Good work.
I do have some standards, and it's that, we started this at 7 a.m. I do wait till 10 a.m.
I like that.
to drink my first
There's some
Diet
boundaries
Coke.
here. There's some boundaries. Kate, that was solid. Anyone listening to this episode, if you enjoyed it, please do leave us a review. If you found it helpful, give us a little 5-star and write a little comment to help spread the word of the How to Fitness podcast. Kate, thank you so much. That was awesome.
Thanks, everyone, for listening. We'll talk soon.
See ya.